Is inflammation stealing your energy? Well, fight back with oxygen. In this episode, my guest is Brad of 1000 Roads. He went from autoimmune pain and melanoma cancer scares to rebuilding his health using EWOT, exercise while on oxygen therapy. Breathing near pure oxygen while doing short cardio sessions. We break down what EWOT is, how it can help your overall health, ramp up fat burning, and also your recovery by re-oxygenating your cells. This is probably one of the most excited guests I've had with a new technology that I have heard about and can't wait to try. So if you're feeling tired, stick around. Your 15-minute energy upgrade starts now. So I keep talking about my SKOOL community that I'm on, and I've grown into about 100 members. And I'm really trying to help out the over 40 crowd, putting a platform out there that's better than Facebook groups. I really love this SKOOL setup. Having any type of discussion, if you can look at the tabs here, from general discussion to focusing on diet, movement, inflammation, stress, sleep, social life. And then I put my podcast episodes on here as well to make it an all-in-one episode. People comment, I answer questions daily. So this is just where I'm spending my time. On my calendar right here, if you look at the tabs up here, I throw in coffee chats every now and then just to have fun. I started doing more office hours. So I'm trying to hold these every other week, every 3 weeks, depending on the amount of people coming on. This is personal training, more in a group setting, but right now with how many people are coming on, it's a little more semi-private. Right now, my SKOOL cost is $20 a month, but if you pay for the year, you can get it down to like about $15 a month. And besides the access to me daily, you have video chat with office hours through Zoom every other week. And for some of you coming in, give me your schedule, give me your times, and I'll start throwing in something that works for you, knowing that other people might join as well. But right now, we're not that packed. You might even get one-on-one sessions with me. This is just something I really enjoy doing. I really want to build this up. And when I need to, I'll just start opening more office hours, more help, whatever anyone needs. And we'll just grow from there. So once again, check out the show notes for the link. Or if you just Google Over 40 Fitness Hacks SKOOL, SKOOL, I will be the first thing that pops up on Google with the SKOOL emblem right there. And you can sign up that way. Check us out. Hope to see you there. Brad, thanks for coming on my show. It's awesome to have another Brad. I had another Brad from a different line of work a couple years ago. So real excited to talk about EWOT. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce your acronym, but when I saw your one sheet, EWOT, exercise with oxygen therapy, and I briefly talked a little bit of some of my experience at some of these new smart trending gyms coming out, and they use some of these modalities. But I really don't know too much of the science behind it and what are the pros and cons. Before we get into that, my audience always wants to get to know you. How'd you get into what you're doing? I'm sure you got a cool story, and I'll let you take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Brad. It is always good to get a couple Brads in the same
Brad or
room.
Chad?
So probably about a decade ago, even longer, I was having all sorts of chronic health issues. And I'd have them all my life, and they came and went, but they were never like major things. But it started to get progressively worse in 2010 and 11. I developed autoimmune arthritis and started seeing a rheumatologist, and they put me on some drugs that would help for a while, and then they'd wear off 6 months later, and I was even in a worse state. I was on this treadmill of more drugs until I developed melanoma, skin cancer, one of the side effects of some of the drugs I was on, and it had me reframe, like, maybe I need to think about what I do here. So I went back to my rheumatologist, and I was really afraid, and I asked him, if I don't take the drugs, I'm going to die in pain of this autoimmune disease, and if I take them, I'm going to die of cancer. So I'm like, I'm a father of 3 kids, actually 2 kids at the time, and I can't die. I'm responsible for a lot of lives here. And he didn't really have a satisfactory answer. He's like, well, we'll just try a different drug in the same class and hopefully it won't have the same reaction. So it was pretty scary. It was a wake-up call. And I said, well, I don't know. Neither of those paths seem good. I got to find a third path out of this thing. And so I started doing a bunch of research and taking greater ownership of my health and wellness. Eventually, I found a doctor. He diagnosed me with Lyme disease when I was in really bad shape. I could barely walk. I was walking like a 90-year-old. I had severe foot pain. It felt like the bottoms of my feet were beaten with meat hammers. Every step was excruciating. Brain fog, neurological issues and pains, nerve pains, just so many different symptoms, hard to describe. And he said, you're in bad shape, and I'm going to recommend a Hail Mary here. You either need to do hyperbaric oxygen or EWOT, exercise with oxygen therapy. And I never heard of EWOT. So I immediately looked at hyperbaric, and it involved going into a doctor's office, pressurizing you, spending 90 minutes in a tube, And then depressurizing, it was going to be a 2.5 to 3 hour ordeal. You need to do it 7 days a week for many weeks on end, and cost of 300 to 500 a session. It was tens of thousands of dollars. And I was just like, I've tried so many things at this point. I was like, I can't see myself plunking down 50 grand for an experiment that may not work. So I begrudgingly looked at EWOT, and I wasn't really impressed with all of the marketing literature that was on the internet, and there wasn't very many customer testimonials or anywhere to learn about it. And they were charging really expensive prices. And so I just thought to myself, I don't trust this either, so I'm going to make my own. And I did, and I started getting better. About a year later, I went to the doctor, and he's like, wow, you're getting better. Are you doing the oxygen? And I said, I am. And he said, well, that's great. Who'd you buy it from so I can tell my patients? And I said, I didn't buy it, doc. I actually just made it myself. And he looked at me shocked. He was like, would you consider making this for my patients? And that was the birth of this company. That was probably 2017. About a year later, we opened our doors in 2018.
Oh, wow. What was the product you made?
It's exercise with oxygen therapy. What it looks like is you can buy a medical grade device that can purify oxygen out of the air. And they usually come in two sizes. They produce either 5 liters of oxygen every minute or 10 liters of oxygen every minute. The challenge is that when you're exercising, you can need up to 50 or 60 liters of oxygen a minute. So these machines don't produce nearly enough for exercise. What you do is you take these machines and you fill this large reservoir. In our case, we have a 1,000-liter reservoir filled with oxygen, and then you breathe from that reservoir. And so you're able to use these machines to produce enough oxygen to allow you to do an EWOT session. For your listeners who've never heard of it, EWOT's really simple. All you're doing is about 15 minutes of cardiovascular exercise while you're breathing near pure oxygen from a mask. And it's as simple as that.
I think with the device I tried at the Smart Gym I was telling you was they chose the bike for some reason. And then they had a big balloon behind us with a tube. It goes, so probably the same style of they need to fill that reservoir up because we're going to be sucking it dry basically. So this is nothing you can really go out and hike or go outside without having this device behind you. Most people prefer to work out at home anyways.
That's right. What's cool about it is, and we can get into the benefits in a little bit, but it really only takes 15 minutes. So if you're someone who likes to go out and do a hike, that's great. You can go out and do a hike. You can just carve out the last 15 minutes of your hike, or you can do on the days you aren't hiking and get the benefits from it. I think that's one of the really appealing things about this modality is it doesn't take a huge time commitment.
Okay. Well, before we go on the benefits, I wanted to ask you, did you try any other holistic modalities? Which one of those failed first hit and you scored on doing EWOT?
I tried so many different things, everything from lifestyle to modalities. I had the most restrictive diet. At one point, I was on the paleo diet, the autoimmune protocol, which is a subset of it, which is even more restrictive. I joked I had to eliminate anything in my life that brought joy: no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, no carbohydrates, not even all the vegetables, no tomato, etc. It was very restrictive. I tried all sorts of different supplements, herbs, antibiotics, frequency, all sort, like, so if you can name it, I probably tried.
Did you do any
it,
fasting or long fasting, any of that kind of stuff?
I've done some fasting as well. My body was in such disarray. It was in such a spiral. I just didn't see much. I wouldn't even say I scored a home run on this. When I started doing it, I didn't notice any benefits up to my 3rd month. We talked to our customers. It's a range. Some folks do one session and they're hooked. They're like, this was amazing. I have such a clear head. I have such energy. I slept so well. I love this. Other folks take a little bit of time, but I haven't heard anyone that took 3 months like I did. I was at the long end of the response curve.
And if it takes that long, a lot of people might give up on it. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I was fortunate that I didn't know what else to do. So it was out of desperation and trying everything under the sun.
Well, let's go into the benefits. And what is some of the reasoning that this oxygen therapy worked to handle some of this stuff for you?
Yeah, so the advent of EWOT goes back to the 1960s and 1970s. There was a gentleman, von Arden, who did a bunch of research on it. He was a very prolific Austrian inventor. In the 1930s, he helped the commercialization of cathode ray television sets. And then he went on to invent the scanning electron microscope and so many other things. Genius and inventor. He decided to focus on exercise with oxygen research in the 1960s and 70s, looking at how it affected cancer. He published a very large book on the topic, and that's a basis for the entire EWOT industry. So what he found is as we all age, inflammaging, which many of your folks may have heard of, is this supposed natural inflammation that happens to us as we age, builds up inside of our circulatory system and inside of our capillaries that are thinner than a human hair. That inflammation causes swelling and it causes the capillaries to just swell shut. Now there's no red blood cells getting downstream, and all those cells downstream go from aerobic respiration, which is producing energy in your cells using oxygen, to anaerobic respiration, which is producing energy without oxygen. And there's problems with that. That's like your backup generator. The cells can only produce about 5% of the 5% of the energy in anaerobic state as they can in an aerobic state. So the lack of oxygen immediately puts them into a low energy state. They start cutting out non-essential functions, and even the essential functions are, if you will, on life support. The other problem with anaerobic respiration is burning glucose without oxygen produces all of these waste products like lactic acid. So if you're working out really hard at the gym and you're sore the next day, that's caused by lactic acid. So what happened is during your exercise, your body wasn't able to bring in enough oxygen. And so it's switched over to anaerobic respiration. And now you've got all this lactic acid built up inside your cells, and it takes time to clear it. And so that lactic acid is doing further damage as well. So he discovered that when you exercise with oxygen therapy, a few really cool things happen. The first thing that happens is the oxygen doesn't just oxygenate your red blood cells, which typically carry like 98% of the oxygen, but it also saturates your blood plasma. Now, your blood plasma is like this clearish brown liquid that the red blood cells ride on. And it typically only carries like 2% of your oxygen. But when you're doing EWOT, it forces a ton of oxygen in. And blood plasma is like 1,000 times smaller than a red blood cell. So it's able to get through those choke points and deliver oxygen downstream and switch all those anaerobic cells back to aerobic respiration immediately. Even more important is oxygen is incredibly anti-inflammatory. And so it creates this anti-inflammatory effect that reopens those capillaries and reestablishes more youthful blood flow. We're talking to folks here in their middle age. As we age, every year past the age of 25, because of this inflammaging, we lose about 1% of our body's ability to utilize oxygen. You don't notice it when you're 28 and 30, but as you get to 45 and 60, you notice you don't quite have the same energy as you did when you were 25. It's simply a lack of oxygen to your cells. And so by doing EWOT, we're able to reopen those capillaries that are blocked and reestablish more youthful blood flow. And that was the aha that Von Arden discovered that caused the sensation that became EWOT, is that it's cellular, it's anti-aging at a cellular level, at an energetic level.
I was going to say, so like the process oxygenating the blood, you could get benefits from just doing the hyperbaric chamber. It's just going to take longer. And you mentioned how expensive it is. So you pass more bang for your buck for your time because of the exercise. It's just getting injected in there at a faster rate than what a hyperbaric chamber would. So both modalities would work, but my thing is, what's the most bang for my time? So is that true, everything I just said?
It's absolutely true. So it's less time intensive, it's less expensive, and it's more powerful because, as you point out, so in hyperbaric, what happens is we're using high pressures to push more oxygen through your lungs. But on the other side of that lung membrane, the pressure isn't doing much. What I mean by that is if you were to take your blood pressure in a hyperbaric chamber, your blood pressure doesn't go up the same amount that the pressure in the chamber. And the other thing that happens to your body when you're doing hyperbaric is your body tries to get to homeostasis. So it notices this flood of oxygen and it tries to control it. One of the things it does is vasoconstriction, where your blood vessels shrink to limit the amount of oxygen through. So when we're doing EWOT, instead of pushing oxygen through our lungs, we're using exercise to pull it through. But then we're getting all these other benefits on the other side in the circulatory system. Your heart's beating faster and deeper. Your blood vessels are dilating, etc. We're hijacking all the physiological changes that happen in exercise to drive more oxygen into your body more deeply.
What about using something like nitric oxide to help vasodilate those veins and capillaries so this even works more effective? Is that a synergistically something that can work together?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have folks who will use it with that as well, or L-arginine or any of these vasodilators to try to drive even more oxygen in. You can definitely do that. And it will.
But have you seen any success with that or any metrics on that?
What I'd say is it's probably like a 10% adder, so to speak. If you're doing exercise, That's the most potent thing. One of the cool things about EWOT that you can't get from hyperbaric is you're going to get all of these fitness benefits.
So,
The workout, and there's this really powerful synergy between exercising and oxygen. As a matter of fact, when you normally work out, a lot of the benefits come from this excess oxygen consumption. So your body, when you start working out, it goes into what I'll call like oxygen starvation mode. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough oxygen to maintain this level of activity. And that's why you start breathing deeper and your whole cardiovascular system tunes itself in to bring more oxygen to your tissues. And when you stop exercising, after you get done, there's often excess oxygen floating around in your system for a period of hours. And that's believed to be a large component of the benefit of exercise. So here we are now marrying those two together, and it just does so many wonderful things for your body. Some of the first folks who used EWOT were actually Olympic athletes. We have a ton of research in that community of showing how it improves VO2 max, which is the measure most athletes use for their cardio conditioning, like the maximum amount of oxygen they can intake within a minute. It improves endurance, it improves strength and power. When people start doing EWOT, what they notice is, so let's say I'm going to pick some numbers here. Let's say every day you jogged on the treadmill at 6 miles per hour. And now we put the mask on. The first thing you're going to notice is 6 miles an hour doesn't feel as hard as it used to. This is not that hard. Like, I need to crank this up to 6.5 or 7. In a few weeks, you're going to crank it up to 7.5, and then it's going to be 8.5. And that's going to happen for a while. And it's surprising to folks. It was for me because I wasn't looking for any athletic benefits. I was just trying to get my quality of life back. It was just like, wow, I need to keep increasing. I use an elliptical machine. I had to keep increasing the resistance on my elliptical machine to feel like I was getting that same level of workout.
At the smart gym I was running that bike on with the whole EWOT system, I think it was a minute on, minute off, where you would go a minute on and then constrict it, and you definitely could feel, oh my God, this is terrible. And they're basically stressing the system. Is that something that you recommend, or is that just their...
We came to the market wanting to bring the price of EWOT systems down to help people with chronic illness and inflammation because of the powerful anti-inflammatory and detoxifying effects of oxygen. For those folks, we generally don't recommend oxygen deprivation because clear research shows anywhere you have low oxygen, you have inflammation. And anywhere you have inflammation, you have low oxygen. They're basically two sides of the same coin. And so when you go into this oxygen deprivation setting, it can unleash more inflammation that most folks dealing with chronic challenges deal with. People do that with our systems. We have athletes who are doing it and they want to get the extra 2% of performance out sort of thing. And the way you can do it with our systems is it's simply through breath holds. So what you do is every minute you just hold your breath for like 5 or 7 seconds to stress the system.
There we go. Like for me, I use an oxygen deprivation mask that has little constrictors on it, and I only go for a short time and I'll take breaks with that. And I'm using that modality to boost my VO2 max. But like you said, there's probably some cons to that if you're not watching. I'm building up some inflammation, but I feel like the rest of my healthy lifestyle, fasting, everything I've been doing can help clear that up. I agree that if you do that too much and you don't have anything to back it, you're just playing with fire a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, actually everything's person dependent. And for someone like you who's got a healthy lifestyle, your body probably handles that inflammation and it probably treats it like a hormetic response where it's actually using that to bring in more anti-inflammatory cytokines and so forth.
Now that you're using your system, you're getting more oxygen therapy. That makes sense. More oxygen helps vasodilate, get everything moving better. Is there any cause for you hear about oxidative stress? In my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm pumping more oxygen in, but the byproducts of that will be more oxidative stress. So I got to ramp up my antioxidants to take care of all these free radicals, or is that totally two separate things?
We don't see that with folks. They don't have that issue. Some of the things that really cause the most oxidative stress in the body are toxins and metabolic waste products. Oxygen is an incredible detoxifier. It detoxifies through a variety of different channels. Actually, 70% of all the toxins in our body are released through our lungs, and that's not commonly known. When we talked about lactic acid, for instance, in order for your body to get rid of lactic acid, it needs oxygen to oxidate it and break it down. Oxidation can be a positive and a negative. In this case, the body uses the oxygen for detoxification in a variety of ways. When you switch the cell back from anaerobic to aerobic respiration, it now has the energy, and the first thing it starts doing is releasing all the toxins trapped inside the cell wall. It's like, okay, now we've got energy to take the trash out. That oxygen helps break all of those things down so that it can be eliminated through your kidneys and your liver and all of your elimination organs. We don't see an increase in oxidative stress, including folks who've done blood tests. It's not borne out inside many of the labs we've seen.
So if that's the case, and there's no kind of worry about that for, say, the mega marathon runners out there who are, I only do half-hour, 15-minute sessions a day. That's my lifestyle, and it's great. So this seems like a perfect fit for me. But for those mega marathoners who are putting in hours each day, is there any negative effects of, okay, maybe I just won't go outside. I'll go on the EWOT machine and do the same amount of time under this oxygen therapy. Is there any risks of that, or more power to them?
Well, that's a great question. So first off, they couldn't do that. The EWOT system is designed so the vast majority of people can get 15 minutes in. A lot of folks will have some left over, some will use it all, but there's not enough to go. Some people maybe will get 18 minutes, 22 minutes, but you're not going to be able to get, especially a marathon runner, they're probably going to suck it dry. Could be 15 minutes sort of thing. There's only really two risks with oxygen. The first risk is it's a fire accelerant. That doesn't mean it's flammable like gasoline. If I put a lighter up to the end of the hose, it wouldn't create a flamethrower. It's not like gasoline.
But it helps an existing fire.
Yeah, if there's an existing fire, it'll make it burn hotter and faster. So like we tell folks, just place it 10 feet away from any of your gas appliances, your water heater, your stove, your furnace sort of thing. And then I point out that if the furnace were to catch the house on fire to the point it could travel 10 feet and burn a hole through the reservoir,
you got different problems
to get out of that house, right? You better have a big problem. The other risk with oxygen in general is something called oxygen toxicity. Oxygen toxicity is when you get too much oxygen trapped inside of your blood vessels and it can't escape. Now, let's just say you were breathing oxygen and sitting on the couch. If you were to do that, it would take probably over 24 hours before you could get to that point where you start getting oxygen toxicity without increased pressures, like in a hyperbaric chamber. And that in a hyperbaric chamber could happen sooner. When we're doing EWOT, 1,000 liters is equivalent to about the amount of oxygen you would breathe in 12 or 14 hours in a day. So it's already self-limited by the reservoir. Even if you could make that reservoir 100 times larger, you still couldn't get oxygen toxicity, because when you're exercising, we talked about that synergy, you're producing a massive amount of carbon dioxide. And we tend to like consider carbon dioxide a waste product of cellular metabolism, but it also has an important purpose in our blood vessels in that it creates a pressure that drives the oxygen out. So you can't get oxygen toxicity from EWOT regardless of dosage. Very safe. No major issues. The only risks with EWOT are the risks that are inherent in exercise itself. Soft tissue injuries, slipping and falling.
Mega athlete that was working out 3 times a week with breaks, proper nutrition and all that, there shouldn't be a problem with adding oxygen therapy at those 3 sessions as well. If they want to do the time and pay all the money and biohack, then more power to them.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we recommend folks do EWOT 3 to 5 times a week. I do recommend at least the day off to most folks because your body needs to rest and recover from the exercise. But there's folks out there in the cancer community in like alternate treatment centers that are recommending people do EWOT 3 times a day without any issues. I think it's overkill personally, but there's no major harm other than the over-exercising sort of harm that comes with it.
Very cool. Well, Brad, tell us about the product. I know we all have it in our mind. It's just a bag that holds however many, like you said, the liters. Can I literally do anything that I have in my house? A bike, a treadmill, I've got a trampoline, as long as this thing's stationed somewhere on the ceiling? I'm not sure how this setup works.
That's a great question. We have a machine called an oxygen concentrator, which takes the oxygen in your room at 21% and purifies it to 93% oxygen. That's connected by a thin oxygen tubing to this large reservoir. The machine is maybe 15 inches wide, let's call it 15-inch square, maybe 18 inches high, roughly speaking. It's on wheels, and you can place it anywhere. We sell our system with the 25-foot tubing, and all you need to do is plug it into any normal old outlet and let her rip, so to speak. It's decidedly not very technical. It's a hard switch sort of thing. So because we know we're dealing a lot of times with folks who have chronic health conditions and they might have and we don't want to overwhelm them with technology. So that's hooked up to this reservoir. Now the reservoir is effectively, it looks like a massive pillow. It's about 6 feet wide and about 5.5 feet tall. And you hang it on this stand, which is basically 2 tripods with poles going up and a crossbar between the tripods. You hang it on there. And off of that reservoir comes a hose that you hook up to a mask. You just put this mask on your face, hook up the hose, and you do 15 minutes, and it's as simple as that. Now, you were asking about what kind of exercise can you do, and really, You can do any stationary exercise as long as you're getting your heart rate up. You're going to get benefits from EWOT.
Well, you aerobic,
I like to,
state with zone 2 or something like that. I don't imagine you want to do high intensity exercise or lift in weights because you're going to be using a different source of energy. That defeats the whole purpose, right?
you can do all of those things and you will get benefits, but I believe the peak benefits come from doing
Aerobic
cardiovascular
exercise.
in the aerobic range. If you can target 70 to 80% of your theoretical max heart rate, that's a sweet spot where it's a balance between generating too much inflammation, but also getting all those synergistic benefits of exercise. That seems to be a really sweet spot for most folks. We have folks doing treadmill, elliptical, stationary bikes, trampolines. We even have really sick folks doing vibration plates or using one of those $49 pedal bikes that you use with a regular chair that you get off Amazon. Even folks just starting, if they're not in good condition, they'll just start with aerobic stretching. I've done weightlifting with the mask on. I prefer not to just because having stuff right here when you're trying to move is a little bit. When I do my weightlifting, I'll do a session and then immediately afterwards, I'll do my 15-minute EWOT session on my cardio equipment. It has some pretty amazing benefits because you blast all that lactic acid out of your cells. Sometimes I'll travel or something, I'll miss a week or maybe even 2 weeks of lifting weights and go right back to it. And I never get muscle stiffness, which is outrageous at my age. I would get muscle stiffness from that at age 27. Even now when that happens, I'm like, this is just crazy. Wow. So that also helps you increase your strength faster, etc.
Yeah. So, a lot of benefits from that. And especially if you already know the benefits of what exercise can do for you, this is just an add-on to get you to that next level. What do you think was the science behind why it worked so well? Was it that the capillaries were so tight and you weren't getting blood flow, and that's a big problem for arthritis or any autoimmune issues?
Yeah, there's certainly a circulation component to all of that, but I think it's multimodal. It helps by improving your circulation and the anti-inflammatory effects that come with that. And obviously you're getting all the natural benefits of exercise from it. That inflammation is systemic, right? The anti-inflammatory effects of oxygen are also systemic. Another huge component is the detoxification benefits. When you are really sick, often your body gets very toxic. In the case of Lyme disease or long COVID, the persistent infection is causing a toxic inflammatory environment because it tamps down your immune system. And so it makes it more hospitable to the visitor, if you will, but less hospitable to you. Yeah, exactly. So the detoxification is important, the amplification of the immune system. Oxygen is incredibly anti-cancer. A Nobel Prize winning researcher from the 1920s showed that he could make any cell cancerous just by choking off oxygen. So obviously I had not only cancer once, but also several different types of precancerous conditions. So it helped with that. I've never really had any reoccurrence. And like melanoma itself, really high likelihood you're going to get it again within the next 5 or 10 years. So I've long passed that. The other benefit, I guess, Brad, your listeners will really find interesting is one of the ways it works is it ramps up and maximizes your mitochondria. Yeah. So it creates what's called mitogenesis, generating brand new mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, as we used to call it in biology. This is the energy factory. And that's not just about feeling awake and alert. Every cell in your body needs that to do whatever it does best, whether it's the skin cell, liver cell, or brain cell. It helps create more youthful mitochondria and it ramps up fat burning. When you're doing EWOT, it maximizes fat burning and it maximizes the potential of our mitochondria. So that can lead to weight loss, and it also leads to a clear head, better long-term memory and short-term memory, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely the benefits that I'm trying to get in my audience as well. I always talk about that's the reason I do at least one HIIT session a week, because that's the best thing you can do to boost that mitochondria and grow new ones. I don't like doing it a lot because this is very damaging on the body to do that much HIIT. I mean, there's probably easier, safer things, which is why I do rebounding. And I put the oxygen deprivation mask on there is to stress the body a little bit, get my VO2 max up so my body can get more oxygen. It sounds like I don't need to do as much of that if I just have the oxygen. But I think for me, like we talked about, a little bit of both is fine as long as I'm getting rid of this waste product.
That's right.
The power of one 15-minute session a week of doing HIIT like that and seeing the fat burning, I can tell the difference between doing that or not because of the increased mitochondrial count. So this is right in line with what I preach on my podcast too.
It's pretty cool. I mean, it's fascinating just because it's oxygen, right? It's something we've been using every breath of our, and there's the risk profile in EWOT is basically non-existent other than the risk of exercise. So that was one of the ahas for me. I'm like, if this doesn't work, what's the downside? I guess I get more oxygen.
Yeah, $2 and
And I tried plenty of things that were probably much more risky than that along the way.
But the whole name of the game is that we got to start focusing on our health over 40. Living life, it's not conducive to longevity. Our system's getting bogged down. We're getting more tired, lazier. We don't move as much. All these things start compounding. That's why we got to play the catch-up game. And if we can grab some of these products and just enhance our experience and get there faster, it might keep someone on that lifestyle longer.
Yeah. When you're in really bad shape with a chronic illness, you forget where you were when you get better. But one time I was looking back and remembering, and I was starting to think how when I was at my worst, when I started this, I didn't have the energy to get through the day. I was faking it at work, hoping no one noticed, hiding in my office. I'd sleep all weekend just to have enough energy to fake it at work. Here I am a decade later, decade older sort of thing. And I never really have an issue with energy. At one point I was running this company. I was working full time. I was my kid's assistant wrestling coach. And that was when it hit me. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I was actually helping start a second company. And I was like, how am I doing all this? So I think that one of the hard things as we get older is just, if you don't feel the energy, you just want to sit on the couch, and the thought of doing any of these other things that are helpful, whether it be tackling a new fitness regime or even thinking about eating healthier. You're like, I'm just tired and I just want to put some sugar in my face to hopefully give me some energy. And I just want to eat some comfort food because I'm exhausted and I got to go take the kids to the thing, or I got to go mow whatever it is. I think that's a big game changer for folks.
And that's the downward spiral that everyone over 40, I just say that because that's when it started for me and everyone else. Watch it going down and you got to do something to pop yourself back up. Awesome.
That's right.
Brad, anything else you want to put out there before we get into how to get in contact with you, your website, socials, and all that?
No, I think we covered a lot of great ground. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. So 1000roads.com is the website. Social media handles?
1000roads.com, all spelled out. ONETHOUSANDROADS.com. 1000 Roads HQ on YouTube. We're regularly putting out some great content on this. So if this interests you, you should definitely check us out and subscribe on our YouTube channel. I think we're one of the few folks out there that is really trying to put out content to folks and make this accessible. We also are one of the few out there that's actually doing reviews on our site so folks can hear from other customers and what their experience is with it, not just hearing from a company. You can hear right from your peers, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
well, appreciate what you do. And my audience knows I'll put all those links in the show notes. Definitely check out the YouTube channel. Check out the products. I'm assuming that you delivered to all 50 states, I hope, or at least to California.
Yes, we do. And we even ship internationally for folks as well. So free shipping in the continental United States.
Well, Brad, thanks once again for coming on my show. This is the best part about being the host of podcasting, is just sitting here getting to know all these different modalities, different parts of health and wellness that I didn't learn in my personal training certification. This is like decades worth of knowledge, and I'm getting to access all of it, and then I regurgitate it back out. So appreciate everything you do and everyone else as well.
Thank you, Brad.